In this session, you will learn 5 advanced PPC, Amazon advertising strategies, which will help you to increase sales not only for the paid traffic, but also organic traffic. Our guest will be Brian Johnson from Canopy Management Agency. And this session is part of the Seller Fest online virtual event, which is sponsored by 2 companies, Getida and VA Academy. VA Academy is specializing in VAs, virtual assistants, for Amazon sellers. So they work only in Amazon space. So if you need help in, let's say, social media or PPC management or listing optimization, talk to VA Academy and they might have you somebody to help you for affordable price. Check the link below in the description and book a call with them. Getida is a FBA auditing company. They specialize in maximizing FBA reimbursements. And it doesn't matter how big you are on Amazon, small or big, talk to them and they might get some money back from Amazon, which they owe you. Both links below in the description. And this session I'm hosting together with Lisette. Hello, Lisette.
Hi, Augustus. Happy to be here with you to host another great session for the Seller Fest Online. And I'm excited to invite Brian on stage, who will share his knowledge about advanced PPC strategies that Amazon sellers can use. So, hi, Brian.
Hi there.
So before we go to your presentation and dive into the details, could you first introduce yourself and let us know what you do in Amazon space?
Certainly. So I'm Brian Johnson, and I've been in the Amazon space. I've been in e-commerce for about 15 years. I've been in the Amazon space for about 8 years now. Time flies, I guess. When I first started out, I started out in developing my own products, like a lot of 3P sellers, and quickly realized there wasn't the advertising resources and the knowledge base out there, but I needed to use it. Because I started consulting for some friends as well, and they had a really big catalog on Amazon already. And so because it wasn't out there, I had to solve my own problem, went out there and started creating my own community to talk about it, my own software to automate it, and my own training course in order to answer a lot of the common questions that kept coming back to me. And so it just kept on growing from there. Eventually that led to our flagship advertising and marketing agency, Canopy Management. And yeah, it's been one heck of a ride the last 8 years.
All right, thank you very much for the introduction. So while you are getting ready to share your slides, I wanted to remind all of the people watching us live that Brian will answer to all of your questions you type into the chat box today after the presentation. So use your chance to ask questions from the real expert. And also, if you're watching us later, then you can post your questions as comments, and we try to invite Brian back to answer those as well.
Very cool. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen then. Yeah.
Yeah, then we are ready for you. And also one more thing, in order for us to bring you more videos like this and to events like this, then definitely whenever you're listening and you're learning something new, then like this video and also subscribe to our channel, because also from our channel, you will find more videos we have done before with Brian. And now we have your presentation ready for us as well.
Cool. All right. I'll go ahead and jump right in then. All right. So let me go ahead and let's skip the front slide there and just jump right into this. So what I was going to talk about primarily as far as scaling sales on tier 1 terms, that may seem a little unusual if I'm talking about PPC, but ultimately what I want to be able to do is to grow Amazon. That's kind of the purpose of Amazon advertising, is to contribute, not to be the only thing you do, but to contribute to growing your traffic and sales to your products. Specifically to target a very specific audience, and ultimately to try to magnify anything else that we do, including advertising. So I want to frame, I'm going to put kind of a box around the advertising. I will show you some great tactics on advertising, but I'm going to wrap this around some prerequisites that you need to take care of that are commonly mistaken or commonly missed by most brands. It is missed so badly, in fact, that I can pretty much go into any product niche on Amazon and know exactly within 10 minutes how to take over market share from competitors, mostly because most brands on Amazon fail to stand out, to differentiate their product from their competitors, let alone target a very specific audience. So that makes it a lot easier for you to dominate your own product niche if you simply just take some of these steps, take action on some of these steps that I'm going to teach you today. Okay. So from a prerequisite standpoint, I want you to be able to identify what your product differentiation is. I'm going to give you a couple of tasks that you can do on that in order to find out what that is. It is very common for a brand owner to be so in the weeds, so knowledgeable about their products, the ingredients, the materials, the certification codes, all these industry terminology, that they forget to speak to their target audience at a level that they can quickly understand. Therefore, they quickly understand what's in it for them. So, and then we'll go into identifying tier 1 search terms, and then I'll show you how to apply that in your advertising in order to magnify your advertising moving forward. So to grow PPC sales that is scalable on Amazon, this advanced strategy, like I was saying, is not in the ad campaigns. It starts at the product itself. So since traffic and conversion rate equals the sales that you're looking for, then increasing both traffic and conversion rate increases profitable sales for both your organic sales as well as your advertised sales or sponsored sales. First thing we're going to do is we're going to identify the product differentiator, where your product can stand out. Next, we're going to identify your tier 1 search terms, your primary search terms that you're going to be, that you're expecting your target audience to be using to search and find your product. We're going to go after those. Then we're going to increase your traffic through increased ad visibility, as well as increased ad click-through. In other words, engagement with your target audience. And of course, increase the listing conversion. Increased conversion rate on a product listing, you may already know this, is it dramatically increases not only the sales you get, but also the profitability of your ads and your profitability overall. It also speeds up your sales velocity at the keyword level that then helps your ranking. So it absolutely all applies to this. PPC is not going to stand alone on its own. Okay. So the first thing then is to identify the product differentiator. What I want you to do is to identify the benefits and features of your product that help your product stand out as unique to shoppers. So ask yourself, what benefit or feature do most products already in your niche that you're competing against, yet few of your competitors, maybe even yourself, point out to shoppers? Here's a couple of quick examples on this. Industry terminology, the UL94 in a certain product class. Oftentimes I see it up in the title. Nobody's searching for UL94, but they're certainly going to recognize very quickly and what's in it for them if they understand the English language of fire resistant for that code. So make sure you're not falling trap to industry terminology that was provided to you by your manufacturer alone. Look at what shoppers are actually searching for. Second example here is if all the products within the niche, for instance, use a mold resistant plastic. Well, it's very common for brand owners to say, like, well, that's not a differentiator because everybody in my product niche has the same feature, the same benefit. Yet you're probably the only one who's pointing it out because everybody else had the same idea that, oh, everybody's got it, so it's not a differentiator. It is if you're the only one who's pointing it out to the shopper. So make sure that you're going back and you're asking your manufacturer things like, what is the most expensive step in creating my product and why? An example on that might be a toy built with higher cost flame resistant plastic. Well, it may be law, it may be code for all products in your niche to have this same kind of flame or fire resistant plastic, but you pointing it out to your target audience makes you stand out as unique, even though you're not, right? Second question to your manufacturer is, what is the most time-consuming step in creating your product and why? An example on this is sometimes they will bake the coloring into a plastic or a mold longer, and it makes it more durable to resist things like sun fading. Again, everybody in your product niche may have that same feature, may have the same manufacturing process. You didn't pay anything extra for it. It's just part of the manufacturing process. But if you didn't ask your manufacturer, you may not have known that there was an added cost or an added time that was already built into your pricing that you've ignored you've forgotten to market to your target audience. And then 3 is what is the purpose does your product serve that is uncommon in your niche? An example might be different uses, for instance. Don't be afraid to narrow down to a smaller audience. If you've got a lot of competition in a space, let's say you're selling eye masks for blocking out the light so you can sleep at night. Well, what about those in some cultures and in some companies? You're allowed to sleep on your desk at lunch. That is a unique target market that you can specifically market to in your images and your titles, and you can carve out your own niche, even if it's in a competitive space. Next, you're going to want to identify your tier 1 search terms. Now, tier 1 search terms are what I call, those are your search phrases your target audience uses to find your product, right? And your product has a good chance of organically ranking well. Okay, Brian, that sounds, all nice and good and everything, but how do you figure that out? Well, if you already know probably is that if you research a keyword and it's commonly taught, it's like, oh, go after keywords that have really high search volume. Well, high search volume usually means an untargeted audience. So you get less engagement, less click-through, less conversion rate, right? So there's risks to that. Plus, you're also introducing a lot more competition. So figure, let's say you go out there and it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to put in my title of my brand new product listing this big keyword phrase that gets 50,000 searches a month, and then you go to find out there's 60,000 competing listings for that. Go much more smaller, more narrow, smaller niche. Start looking for those terms where there's less than 500 competitors in that. I think I actually mentioned maybe 1,000 on the next slide here. I'll give you some rules. In fact, I say less than 1,000. If you can go 500, even better, especially when you're first launching, because you want to gain some position, some indexing in the algorithm, as well as some ranking for low-hanging keywords. You're not going up against 800-pound gorillas that are well established, have a lot of social proof, that are already ranked highly. Don't go after the top guy day 1. That's more like a month 3 kind of attempt. What you want to do is collect as many of these search terms that perhaps you're already ranking for because you properly set up your product listing for SEO and all of the fields, both visible and hidden fields, to target a variety of directly relevant search terms so that your product does get indexed for those search terms. Now, let's say your product is indexed for search terms and you found a set of keywords that maybe you're in the top 80 in organic search already. In other words, Amazon put up little resistance to ranking your high, found that you're really relevant for those search terms. They may not have high search volume. They may not have high conversion as far as volume, but this is where you start out. Lock in the real estate that you can with some of these low hanging. It's often referred to as like go after the long tail keywords, but here's the rules that I use. If your product already ranks in the top 80, if you don't have any, go for the top 120, just kind of have a little flexibility here. Terms that return search results that are closely similar to your product. In other words, most brands selling on Amazon forget to simply say like, oh yeah, that term is relevant for my product, I'm going to use it, and then they wonder why it's not working as well. If they would just put it into Amazon, every single one that they're trying to target, if they put it in Amazon, do a search, and it comes back, it's like, oh, there's a whole bunch of products that aren't the same as mine. Maybe I'm not specific enough. Maybe the search term has dual meaning. So make sure there's a high relevant that Amazon thinks that your product is directly relevant to that search term. All right. Ideally, you've got less than 1,000 competing listings, hopefully even less than 500. Start with those, then go up to 1,000, then 2,000, right? The term phrase has at least 3 words. Usually what I do is I say 3 to 6 words is usually the sweet spot that I'm going after, right? It is sufficiently focused without going crazy, where you've got 10-word phrases. Ideally, if you could also kind of pare that down, if you need to pare down your list, go for ones that have a little bit of searches per month, 500, for instance. And of course, the term, you got to filter out anything that is branded or is specific to a different brand. You want to go after more of the generic terms, the non-branded terms, so that you can actually gain real market share and real conversion. You can go after some of the branded terms later on. Of course, you can advertise on branded terms in order to try to attract your competitor's audience. but that it should be handled separately from your initial goal during launch. Next is you want to make sure that you're increasing your ad visibility through a couple of PPC tactics. Here's where your actual PPC tactics, you can screenshot these, right? So since the algorithm is different, yet overlapping from the ad auction algorithm to the organic or the A9 algorithm, you want to make sure that whatever target search terms you're going after, that you've added them into the product description. This sounds counterintuitive unless you know that the ad auction uses fields like the title, the bullet points, but they also use the product description, which A9 does not, by default, does not. But the ad auction does use the product description. So you want to make sure that you're using that in the product description. You also want to make sure if you're using A+ content, that your image backend keywords on your images of your A+ content are fully filled out, not just 2 or 3 words, back in 12, 15 words on the back end. But don't forget, for ad auction relevance, to make sure that you've got some of those terms you're targeting so that your ads will show and see relevance. Make sure those are in your product description. The exception, of course, as I mentioned here, is if the phrase is already in your title or your bullet points, then it's probably unnecessary to also add it into your product description. You don't need the redundancy, in other words. Good screenshot here. A sponsored product ad keyword targeting campaign is a manual campaign where you're targeting 3 to 5 keywords. I don't personally subscribe to the philosophy that you have to have a limited number of keywords in a campaign. However, there are some examples where it can help, but usually it's not necessary. Now, it's not the same as a few years ago where you could put 10,000 keywords in a campaign. Amazon is still only going to see a certain set of those as relevant. And it's only up to them to determine how many of your keywords are actually relevant. So test first and then start peeling off to new campaigns. The default bid, I would run when you're first launching, at least, certainly default bid, probably about 10% of your discounted product price. In other words, if you are running a launch and you've got a retail price and you're running a discount or a coupon code, then look at what is 10% of that new price. That is where your default bid is, your starting bid. You're also going to add in 100% top of search. This is objective. You can go 50%, you can go 200%. Don't go crazy with 500, 800, 900%. It's not going to work. And there's a whole ad auction piece of that sequence that I don't have time to get into today, but trust me, just focus in on like 50, 100, maybe 200% top of search. 100% usually works fine for us. Fixed bidding strategy. On that campaign bidding strategy that's brand new, like in the first 2 weeks, Amazon is automatically going to dismiss your campaign as being unreliable and unlikely to get a click, and therefore it's going to artificially suppress or reduce your default bid to the point where it doesn't even come up, ad doesn't even show. Common indicator you can check for this is, did it get any impressions or did it get very little impressions? That's usually an indicator that the ad auction is dismissing it as being irrelevant, ineffective, untrustworthy. And that's okay, because we can take away their control of doing that simply by starting the first couple of weeks with a fixed bidding strategy. Then you can roll it over to down only, or you can even go so far as to test up and down if you want. Go with something nominal, like a $20 to $50 daily budget. You don't need to go. Don't be so restrictive that you're down below 10. Don't go $100 per day, and then start this for the first 2 weeks, and then reevaluate and assess. This campaign is designed to be more of an aggressive test. Don't expect it to be profitable in the first month, but what you're checking is to see if each search term that you intentionally are going after, ideally the ones that fit those criteria that I mentioned before, your tier 1 search terms, does it move the needle? In other words, does your product increase in the ranking? In other words, did this ad affect your organic keyword ranking for that search term? If it did, keep pressing the gas, right? If it didn't, pull it out of there, try a different strategy, try different search terms, right? Maybe reevaluate that specific tier 1 search term. But that is primarily the test of this one. Now, on the next one, you're going to create a sponsored product ad product targeting campaign. And this is going to be on direct competitor ASINs that rank on page 1 for your target 3 to 5 search terms, right? You can easily just put those into search, see, okay, who comes back? I'm going to go and target those. On those, you don't have a conversion rate advantage because more likely they're highly established. They've got social proof with reviews. They are the 800-pound gorilla that you're going after for those specific search terms, but they have a lot of traffic. This is especially good in off time, because you're going to have competitors who don't run ads or don't perform as well during different times of day, different regions of the country. Maybe they run out of stock. There's a lot of opportunities where this comes in. So here's how I would do this. I would, similar to before, you're doing a test for a couple of weeks to see what works and what doesn't. Default bid, 10% of your discounted product price, $50 daily budget, duration to 2 weeks or so. To test after, within that, or after that 2 weeks, I should say. Am I actually getting engagement? Am I getting some click-throughs? Am I getting conversions based off of some of the high traffic that's coming through some of my top competitors for those niche? Again, if you do convert on that, even though it was a product ad, that product targeting ad is going to show your ads both in their product detail page as well as search results where their product is showing up organically. And so it gives you an opportunity to run some additional ads in a different way. Amazon may show more priority over a keyword target, but the relevant keywords that are in the content of your product listing are also going to get a somewhat of a bump when it comes to organic ranking as well. So that's why we're using both the keyword targeting as well as this product targeting. All right, so I went through this faster. I went through it very fast, right? So I get to go into the couple of last pieces that make a huge difference in the conversion rate for your product. This is for both interest, in other words, engagement. When a shopper sees your product, whether it's an ad or organic, what's going to pull them into the listing, as in get them to the point where you can then showcase all your benefits and your features, as well as pull them away from most of your competitors. You've got to get them to click through on your title or your main image, right? So I always say, you use your main image in order to grab their eye in the first place. Get them to pause for a split second so they can then consider your title. In the first 75 to 80 characters, which is typically visible across all like mobile platforms and any of these shortened ones, in the first 75 characters, you want to make sure that you're able to hook their interest in your title. Some example of this is using things like, I like to go counter to what some of the terminology is that is used by my competitors, specifically so that people go like, oh, that's kind of an odd word, or that's a different word. It's not simply just a repeating pattern that all your competitors are seeing. You want to stand out. Ideally, you're opening in your first 75 characters, you're going after one of your main tier 1 search terms, but you're also putting in maybe a 1 to 2, maybe a 3-word benefit or a feature that helps you to stand out from the rest of your competition. So go back around to some of those questions I was asking before, as far as how to differentiate your product and how to identify how your product can be differentiated. But you can use standout words or letters. Maybe they are synonyms of what everybody else is using, but not the same. Maybe you can use use alternate, like an example on this one, the unique benefit. If everybody's using mold resistant, maybe you say mildew resistant, right? It just catches a slightly different audience, just gets them to pause for a split second to consider your title. That's what you're looking for, right? You're not trying to close them on the title. You're just trying to get them to click through to your product listing, right? Any kind of a unique feature. I mentioned this earlier, is try to avoid industry terminology that they're not searching for, or they don't instantly understand what's in it for them. Replace any kind of industry acronyms with some kind of a 1 or 2 word benefit that they can go, oh, that's unique. I want that. It may seem to them that it is unique when in fact you're offering the same thing all your competitors are. You're simply just putting it at a level of language that's quickly understood, and they can immediately go like, oh, I want that. Nobody else mentioned that it's fire resistant. Well, everybody mentioned that it was UL 94 as an example, right? They use that industry terminology. Use something that is in simpler terms so they can go like, ooh, I want that. That seems unique. And then, of course, last on your product detail page, you've got to close the sale by answering the key question they all ask. What's that key question? Pause for dramatic effect. Okay. No, you want to answer, the acronym is WIIFM or WIFM. What's in it for me? Okay. If I am looking at a product listing, and I've gotten so bad that I look at emails, I look at billboards, I look at products on Amazon. Unfortunately, I see it everywhere now, 7 days a week. I can't even turn it off, right? Really easy for me to say that they didn't do a good job or they did do a good job as far as like standing out and what's in it for me. The what's in it for me is I use like a 5-second rule. You want to use 4 seconds, 8 seconds? I don't care. I use a 5-second rule of, can the shopper, if they look at the title, if they look at each bullet point, if they look at each secondary image, if they look at each paragraph or image that's in A+ content, I want to have this in 5-second chunks very, very quickly. I want the shopper to quickly understand what's in it for them. Either that the feature applies to what they're looking for, or the benefit is something that they want. It solves a pain. Don't make the shopper work for it. Don't simply just throw out a feature and let them figure out how they're going to turn that into a benefit. Just hand it to them. Your competitors or not, you're going to stand out. You're going to look like you actually care about what you're doing and the product that you brought to market. And it's going to be evident when your conversion rate increases. And I can guarantee you your conversion rate will increase, which is going to have a dramatic effect on your ability, your performance of your ads, as well as the conversion rate and, of course, the profitability, which it always comes back to profitability at the end of the day. Let's see here. I think that's it. Yep, that wraps it up.
Great. Thank you very much, Brian. No slides about canopy management. What? Yeah. So.
No, I pulled those.
Nice. All right. Thank you very much. If those who are watching enjoyed the content, don't forget to hit like and subscribe below and type your questions. If you're watching live, type questions now and we will ask Brian to provide answers. If you're watching the recording, use the comment box section below. And perfect. So I think before we move on to the questions, we can talk about the VIP package, which together with my team, we organized during this Seller Fest Online event. A VIP package includes 20 additional videos, which will never be posted anywhere else publicly. And we asked 20 Amazon experts participating in this event to provide additional actionable content, which you can access only if you upgrade with a small investment. And there are some videos from I wanted to say from copywriters, but Daniela is not a copywriter, but she gives tips on storefronts, how to improve your Amazon listing in that section. Kamal talks about Amazon video types, and Chris will give you additional information about Amazon advertising tips. And Brian also has a session which is called How to Double Conversions by Standing Apart from the Competition. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, I hinted at it. I was obviously having a nod because I passionately believe in it. And so in the VIP section, I go into a lot more depth as far as how do you literally double your conversion rate on your product listing simply by changing your messaging, changing the way that you stand out from your competition. It is a lot easier than you think. And I know, because I deal with it every single day, is most brands on Amazon fail to do this unless they're working with an agency like ours. Obviously, that's what we're going to lead with because we know how important it is, how much it impacts profitability overall. And so And this is something you probably should be looking at doing every 6 months, because ultimately, if you are an innovator in the space and you stand out, your competition is going to want to emulate you. They're going to want to copy you, at which point you need to pivot and you need to update again to stand out again. So put it as part of your normal practice. I also talk about split testing on Amazon and using Amazon experiments. And so those are great ways to have the most dramatic effect in your sales and profitability on Amazon. Is going to be in that VIP presentation.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Brian, for contributing. And this package you can access by the link in the description. And Brian, I know you still have one more slide with your contact information. Perhaps we could show it on the screen in case people are interested to get in touch with you.
Yeah. So I would say, I mean, the biggest thing you could do is just go to, canopymanagement.com. Rather than take the time to pull up slides and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, canopymanagement.com, of course, is the agency that I back and I believe in and I co-founded. And we do have a phenomenal team with a great track record. Generally, I would say is that it's certainly worth a conversation. Just see, first of all, what are some suggestions that we have for you to improve if you choose to do that yourself or to work with us. We do have certain minimum requirements, so it may or may not be a good fit, but we'll be open with you. We'll tell you exactly what you think you could be doing to scale up and to do better. And then what business decision you make from there, that's up to you. We're in the business of performing for our partners, for our clients. And we welcome the conversation.
Perfect. And the link to Canopy Management you will also find below in the description. And Lisette, let's take some questions.
Sure. Thank you for this great presentation. Very many details for sellers to study and then implement on their business. So the first question actually has about 3 questions, I think, in it. So for Black Friday or Cyber Monday, how should we arrange our bids? How should we use our top of search as well? And what percentage would be considered too high for this specific weekend? So if you can dive into this question a little bit.
What percentage would be considered? Oh, what percentage of the top of search placement? So when it comes to major events like this, I have a lot of traffic. I usually split my ad strategy so that I have a foundational or almost like a safety net set of campaigns across all ad types set at a pretty low, very low bid, but a high budget. And so what that does is it takes advantage of when my competition runs out of product, runs out of budget, all that kind of stuff, then my low bid ads will show up, whether it's 6 p.m. or 11 p.m. at night, whatever, my ads will start showing up all over the place and also be very inexpensive. In other words, it's not uncommon for us to see single digit ACoS and yet still get a huge amount of volume simply because my competition got out of the way. So that's more of the kind of the running all ads at a low bid, high budget in the background. And then for the ones that I'm more aggressive about, I narrow down. Let's say, for instance, I'm normally targeting 200 keywords. I'm going to focus this down to maybe 20, 30 individual keywords or 20, 30 competitive products that I am looking at what have the highest conversion rate already pre-event. I'm going to focus. I'm going to double down on those. Maybe I'll do 100% top of search just to make sure that I'm competitive. But I'm going to get more aggressive on those because if I do, then it's more likely that when I do get sales off of those higher converting targets, then I'm going to increase my organic rank because of the volume of shoppers that are on Amazon. There's a second thing. I wasn't going to bring this up, but here's kind of a hack that we do. Is we also, for each of our client accounts, we go out and we monitor the competitors throughout each day, every hour throughout each day of during events, whether it's Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Surprise Tuesday, whatever the case is. When there's high volume, is we're always looking for that opportunity where a competitor is running low on stock or has even run out of stock, and we're just going to target the heck out of them with product targeting ads and branded keyword ads. So because Amazon's still going to be sending traffic through their listing the shopper's not going to get what they want. They're going to say like, oh, this is, it's not available. It's 3 weeks out. We're going to steal that traffic all day long. So we do pay close attention to our competition to see where they stumble. We're going to jump in. And obviously what we're trying to do is we're not trying to make a victim of the competitor. We're simply just, we know we've got a great product to offer to that shopper. Might as well please the shopper. Right.
Thank you very much for including this additional hack. Definitely worth a like to this video. So let's take another question for you. So if my variations don't have separate search terms, should I still run ads for each variation, or should I drive all traffic to one ASIN only?
So what I usually do is I'll take, let's say you've got 10 variations, right? Because those are, if they are child variations under the same parent, Amazon is less likely unless you are part of 1P. If you're a 3P seller, then if you have 10 child variations, if you run ads on all of them, Amazon's only going to choose one of those to show in each ad type for each search result. So it's not like you're going to blanket, you've got all your different variations showing up on all the ad spots or organic listing, because Amazon doesn't typically choose multiple children. If you can, obviously if they were already separated, it's kind of late to do that now for Cyber Week, but if they were already separated and can stand on their own, then you can run multiple parallel ads and have multiple results on the search results. But generally, kind of talking about what I was talking about before, is always focus on the products, the ad types, and the ad targets that have the highest conversion rate on big events like this. Otherwise, it's going to get really expensive for you. So focus your ads during an event. I mean, throughout the year, you can do this, of course, but certainly during high volume events like Cyber Week, you want to make sure that you're running ads. Most of your ad budget should be going on those products that have a highest conversion rate. So that, and that may be, let's say you've got, 3 of your 10 variations that have an above average conversion rate, and you think are very competitive in your niche for conversion rate, then you can go aggressive on that, throw 80% of your ad budget at those, because even when it's more expensive during a Cyber Week, that you're going to get your money back because you've got the higher conversion rate. So focus those. You can still run ads on the rest of your variations, but I tend to pool those together with a lower bid, lower budget. So they're more in the background, where most of mine is focused in on the products, the ad types, and the ad targets that have the highest historical conversion rate.
All right, very good. So Richard is asking, so in your slideshow, you had different steps and tips for them. So in the third one, which was increased product visibility, he's asking, was it about the auto campaign, and should this campaign run on its own for 2 weeks before starting the new PPC campaign?
No, I go directly into, because I've already done the keyword research. There are great keyword research tools out there now that you don't need to use an automatic campaign in order to do keyword research. You should not be, in fact, unless you have no funds for any kind of a keyword research tool. Obviously, then you can use it. But an automatic campaign, I typically add on after I do direct keyword targeting. It's not about training the algorithm to understand what I'm selling. It's about going after the keyword research that I properly ran and focusing my ads, my content, SEO, all of my efforts on 15, 20 search terms or 15, 20 keywords that is directly pointed at the audience that I think is going to be most relevant to my audience and is the highest chance of helping me to rank higher because there's less competition. That's those tier 1 search terms. If you want to run an automatic campaign, set a lower bid on it, have it run in the background, and give it a bigger budget, so that it just kind of picks up and adds on some additional search terms here and there. It is not your primary.
All right. Another question from the viewers. Angela wants to know, what are the impact on sponsored products without negative keywords?
What are the impact on sponsored products without negative keywords? I mean, we always use negative keywords. That's just standard optimization practice. I don't know why you would not use negative keywords on non-performing and poor performing search terms. Same thing as like you test a variety of keyword match types as well to see which one works specifically to your niche. It's not as simple as only target exact match. That would be a fool's errand to do that, because that's too narrow of an approach. Your niche may give you an advantage of running broad match keywords, for instance. So that's an example. So whether it's match type, you're still going to be you're going to keep the match type separate, whether it's ad groups or campaigns, doesn't matter. But you're still going to be using negative keywords in order to mitigate the non-performing or poor performing search terms or targets in general throughout. And typically we put those in place at least, every few days. You don't need to do it hourly. You don't need to do it daily even. That's a little hyperreactive there. It works just fine. Works awesome just to do it every few days, maybe once a week if necessary. If you want it during the challenge, when you got like Cyber Week, Black Friday to Surprise Tuesday, is usually don't have a feedback loop. So that is not the time for you to learn about what works. That is for you to double down on what you've proven to work the last 3 months.
Cool. Another question from Jalil. Do you also use budget rules for this weekend to make sure your highest converting campaigns don't run out? If so, how do you set yours up?
Yeah, I mean, if I am confident that I have put in the keywords in the manual keywords campaign example here, if I am confident that I have focused that campaign specifically down, I've paused everything else for the week, for the weekend or for the week, and I'm just running the ones that I know are high converting. Yes, I'm going to probably give it a very generous budget, 2 to 3 times what I normally do per day, and let it run. If you want to use a budget rule in order to do that for you, that's fine. But ultimately, it's about narrowing your focus down into what are my top set of 10 to 20 keywords I know have the highest conversion rates, and then have faith or trust that as long as you're feeding the budget, that it's going to give you the payback, and give you the ROI. It's going to work for you.
Yeah, so anyone who is interested to get in touch with Brian, go through the link below in the description to his agency and set up a call. It's not for everyone, how Brian says.
And and I would also kind of add on here is that normally I don't do this, but if you want to reach out to me directly, I am on social media, of course, but I am also available, brian@canopymanagement.com, if you want to email me directly if you got additional questions. Glad to do that for your audience.
Thank you.
Great offers in your spam folder within 1 hour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's all right.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian and Lisette. See you next time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. See you.
And now I would like to invite you to watch other video where Brian shares how to stand out and to increase Amazon listing traffic and conversion rates. Check this out.